Welcome to Taking the High Road, the special show dedicated to the trucking industry, specifically at the confluence of recruiting, retention, and compliance. In the fourth year as the host of this show, I bring over 2 decades of industry experience, both on the carrier side as well as the vendor side. Each week, I interview industry experts and thought leaders who bring their insight to the driver lifecycle as we discuss the industry's greatest challenges. I always appreciate your feedback, good or bad. Don't forget to leave a rating and a review. I'd also like to thank and highlight the show's valuable sponsors. Their dedication and commitment to the industry and to this show is greatly appreciated. If you're interested in being a sponsor of the show or joining me for an interview, please email jeremy@takingthehigherroad.com. I'm especially honored to introduce this week's guest, professional truck driver Dave Powell. It's not that often that I have the privilege of being joined by a professional truck driver, and not just any professional, one who's been an amazing ambassador both for the company he drives for, Usher Transport, and for the industry overall. Thank you so much for joining me, Dave.
Jeremy, it's a pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
Well, I'd love to get into your background, what got you into the trucking industry, what attracted you to the tank truck sector specifically, and since you're an award-winning driver, and we'll get into that here shortly, I'd like to hear about that experience as well as your input on what it takes to be a true professional truck driver. And since I don't have the privilege of interviewing drivers regularly on the show, it'd be great to get your perspective on a few industry issues. And then, and before we go, we'll also answer a question from a listener during our deeper dive segment. Does all that work for you?
Jeremy, looking forward to it. Can't wait.
Awesome. Well, as you may be aware, I like to kick off most conversations with a book recommendation or maybe a podcast recommendation, anything that you consume that's maybe impactful to you in your life. Is there any, particular, book or podcast or anything like that has been impactful to you?
Well, I primarily circle around industry related podcasts. Obviously, I spend a lot of time driving, so I take in a lot of my content audibly, but I definitely I love Next Generation's work. I love Lindsay Trent's podcast. I listen to every one of those. Of course, XM 146, Road Dog Network. I listen to a lot of that. And here of recent, when I knew I was had the opportunity to talk to you, I've been trying to catch up on a lot of your episodes. So I've got quite the list of podcasts and stuff to listen to. But yeah, it's mainly all industry related, trying to stay up on current events.
Cool. Well, and Audible, I think it makes a lot of sense. You're not in a position where you're sitting and you're able to read a physical book. And honestly, as much as I read, it's still almost, I'd say 90% of the content the books that I read are all via Audible. It's kind of, first of all, I can read them at 1.5 speed. So it's a lot faster. And same with podcasts. And we'll probably get into Next Generation and trucking a little bit later, just because you and I both share an admiration and appreciation for the work that they're doing for the industry. And Lindsay is top notch. So that's cool. You're the first one that's mentioned a podcast, and specifically an industry one, and specifically Next Gen. So that's really cool. I'm sure she will appreciate that as well. Let's I'm curious for, as a driver, what was the catalyst that drove you to become a professional truck driver?
Well, I didn't set out to be a truck driver. I think most people either are brought up within the industry from an early age. But myself, I actually went to vocational school during my junior and senior year. I studied machine trades, tool and die. And I worked in that till I was 21. I enjoyed the work, but I did not like the environment, 40, 50, 60 hours a week inside 4 walls. And my dad is a driver. He's the first of our family that ever has been. And he come from a factory background as well. And he just decided to do it. And he had probably 5 years in it. Prior to me being 21, the company he worked for had an opening. I decided my dad loves it. I'm going to try it. And I fell in love with it immediately. So it wasn't a lifelong dream, but it it turned into one once I started. So, yeah, I haven't looked back since.
So and now that's, maybe 23-ish years ago, right? You've been a professional driver for 23 years, and you've experienced a lot of different facets of the industry before getting into before becoming a tank truck driver. Can you share a little bit about that 23-year journey as a professional truck driver leading up to your role, now as an independent contractor for Usher Transport?
Yeah, absolutely. I started out at Gordon Food Service. I delivered food to restaurants, schools, stuff like that. I worked there for 4 years. I did take another job a little closer to home at a dry freight LTL company. I enjoyed that job as well. And at that point, whenever I wanted to become an owner operator, so I bought a truck, and that's when I had a short amount of time of running over the road. I primarily went to the East Coast, and I pulled refrigerated goods, and I did that for about a year and a half, and I ended up into my neighbor kind of helped me get into the gas business after that, and I did that for a few years until '08, whenever the economy took a downturn. I was kind of the low man on the pole, I'll say, and the steel business found me. I didn't go out looking for it, but I started hauling steel, pulled a covered wagon, flatbed trailer with a side kit on it, and I did that for several years. That's what ended up landing me in Indiana from Ohio. So, and I always wanted to get back in the gas business. I really loved it. So back in 2013 is when I signed on with Usher, and I've been here ever since.
And not only that, well, first of all, going through all of those different industries. I mean, and you certainly it didn't sound like it sounds like maybe the just plain old dry van freight just wasn't sophisticated enough. Wasn't, it's too pedestrian for you. You had, your sight set on some other sectors. What was it that attracted you to the tank truck sector in the industry specifically, especially, I guess, coming from that, when you had some over the road sort of experience? What was it that attracted you to the tank truck sector?
I do like to challenge myself, and the tank sector is much more than getting behind the wheel of the truck and just safely operating it. For what I do, specifically hauling petroleum goods, I load my own truck, unload my own truck. It's fast paced. Home time is a huge thing. That's probably the number one reason why about anybody hauls gas is home time. But like I said, it's quick. I'd say almost half of my day is actually spent outside of the truck. So I'm in and out doing different things. There's better money in hauling hazmat as well. So there's that aspect of it. And I just love it. Like the responsibilities, there's so much more responsibility on me individually other than just driving the truck up and down the road. And I take personal pride in that.
Yeah, well, and we'll touch on that here shortly because that's obvious. But just real quick on Usher, not only are they great friends of mine who I respect immensely, they're also great champions of professionalism and safety in the trucking industry. Usher's very active and engaged. They're involved in the American Trucking Associations, certainly as well as the National Tank Truck Carriers. And one of the reasons they have such a strong reputation is honestly, it's because of leaders like you. You're an ambassador, not just for Usher and not just for the tank truck industry, but just for all of trucking. Now, I know you've driven over 2 million miles without an accident. I think that's an amazing accomplishment that takes a lot of focus, a lot of discipline, and just a lot of devotion to your craft, right? Your level of safety and professionalism hasn't gone unnoticed. And in May of 2024, you were crowned the National Tank Truck Carriers Driver of the Year. So first of all, congratulations. That's an absolute honor. And I know that's really exciting.
Oh, yes. It's something that, when I don't think any truck driver, when they begin their career ever thinks they're going to be on a national platform, win an award like that. And it was a huge honor. I've met so many people within the industry. I've gained a lot of knowledge outside of being a truck driver throughout this process, and it's been awesome. Wonderful people. I'm sitting here talking to you, podcast. I was on XM radio yesterday, and it's crazy. But it's awesome. I'm glad I have a platform to promote the industry and talk about how great it is. So it's been great.
Well, you're the ambassador that we want to for the industry and the rest of the others who aren't in the industry to see and understand. Like, this is a better representation of the industry than some of the stereotypes that are out there. A true professional, and by the way, salt of the earth is generally what people think about when they think about trucking. That's how I certainly think about it, and I think you personify that. Humble, hardworking, dedicated guy. So I know it was a really big deal, and I want to talk about that. I'm just curious, what was that process like? Can you share a little bit about that process of going through the NTTC Driver of the Year, program?
Yeah, it's well, in the beginning, it's a lot of your safety record. That's kind of I always sum it up. That's like the price of admission. So you have to have a pretty solid safety record. You go through the application process. You have to make a submission video. Your safety personnel usually put that together, along with the driver, of course. But they submit that to the NTTC, and they pick eight finalists. And that's whenever those 8 finalists will go to Washington, generally in January, and they'll go through a day of a media day, on camera question and answering. You also go in front of judges for questioning, along with compiling a 3 to 4 minute speech to give in front of the judges. And you're in Washington for a couple days. You do all that. Then you have to wait anywhere from 3 to 4 months, and nothing's happening. But then usually in May they have the national conference, which we talked before we started. It was in Vegas this year, and they bring up all the finalists up on stage. Ryan Strebolo, the president of NTTC, usually talks 3, 4, 5 minutes about each one of the finalists' background, their history, their story, and he gets an envelope and they read it off. Yeah, next thing you know, if you win, you're in front of the mic. Give them your acceptance speech, I guess.
Well, I was there, and so I was celebrating with you. Congratulations! You're the first Usher driver to win the NTTC Professional Tank Truck Driver of the Year award, and I know that is special to Usher as well, because if I'm not mistaken, the award is actually named after the Usher. Yeah.
William A. It's the full title is the William A. Usher Senior Professional Tank Truck Driver of the Year, and yes, I'm the first Usher driver to win it. I'm also the first owner-operator to win it. So, there's a couple first, but that's what means the most out of this whole award, is to bring it home to Usher. It's not my award, in my opinion. It's our entire company's award, and I wouldn't be here without them. So it's a great feeling. I love it.
How about the family? I know you mentioned home time was an important part of why you're in the tank sector and working with Usher. Can you share I know that meant a lot to you. You certainly just articulated that it meant, it was important to Usher as well. How about to your family? What did that award mean for the family?
Well, my wife's been giving me a hard time saying, make sure you can keep getting your head through the doorways and stuff. But it was awesome. That morning that they announced my name, my oldest daughter was there. My wife, my mom was actually in the crowd too at the Usher table. So they actually got to see it. And obviously you were there. And my mom's takeaway was like, I did not realize how big this was without her being in the room, and just through the whole, 3 or 4 day process of the national convention. So it's, they've been obviously completely supportive throughout the years, but yeah, everybody's excited, and they just said, you've always done it. You've always done the right thing when no one's looking, been fair, been honest, worked hard. So yeah, I guess that's my message. Do the right thing when no one's looking, and maybe one day you'll be sitting here like I am. It's crazy to think about, but it's super cool for sure.
Well, and I know that Usher, again, I know the folks there pretty well. I know the folks that you work closely with on the safety and compliance side, risk management, good people, good human beings. Can you share just a little bit about the support that you have there through this, not just through your career, but certainly through this process? And, how has that helped you really become the professional that you are today?
Uh, I mean, they've been great. I can't say enough about Usher. Um, we all know truck drivers have a tendency to turn jobs fairly quickly, but I've been here almost 12 years. We have guys that have been here 20, 30, 40 years. They're awesome. The support staff's great. They've helped me so much. Bo in particular, he's helped me. We've spent so many nights after hours talking about ideas, talking about, my thoughts on different things. Like, when it comes down to the judging portion or writing the speech, he helped me out a lot with that. I think I wrote 10 or 12 drafts of that speech before it was, but he was my sounding board, what do you think? And so, yeah, they've been completely supportive of it, and had my back the entire way.
Yeah, that's really cool. I know that speaks to the longevity that you had there when you can build that sort of rapport and relationship with between drivers and the really everyone else that's not a driver. That's their number one job, is to support the driver. And so having that rapport, that relationship, I think is super important. I want to switch gears a little bit with you here. I know that being a professional truck driver is difficult. Aside from the challenges of operating, 80,000 pounds across the nation's roads, trying to avoid constant dangers of weather and just the rest of the distracted motoring public. But there's also significant risk to drivers' health, as the challenges of just consistently getting proper nutrition, regular movement and exercise, and enough sleep. This is enough of a problem that on average, the professional truck driver's life expectancy is considerably less than most every other industry. How have you been able to adapt over the years in order to maintain your health with just all those direct challenges within your career?
Well, as I said previously, fortunately for what I do, being in and out of the truck, I do stay pretty active, and that it's an inherent byproduct of hauling gas, being active and stuff. But I did spend, like I said, a little bit of time running over the road, and I know all about, fast food out of a truck stop and everything. And people, you have to be mindful of that. I always had a refrigerator. Every week I'd get a pound of lunch meat, some bread, some cheese, stuff like that, to have somewhat of a decent meal. Yeah, you definitely have to be mindful of it. Be active. I just watched your podcast on what's it, Mother Trucking Yoga. I watched that, and yeah, there's great ideas on ways to easy ways to work your body and burn some calories, stay limber. So there's all kinds of outlets for drivers to find easy ways to stay healthy. But it is a real thing, and you have to pay attention to that, and you're the only person that can do that, is you as the driver.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, you had to be very intentional, especially as a long haul driver. Making sure that you prepped accordingly so that you're not at the mercy of what's out there on the road. But it's good that you are in a position where you are as active as you are, and you're home regularly. So there's some more normalcy there. So that helps. I know there's been an ongoing conversation about the driver shortage for as long as I've been in trucking, right? Over 20 years. Every once in a while, like during the Great Recession, you touched on that in the wonderful years earlier. And then in today's current freight recession, that conversation is about the driver shortage is more muted. Not only because a bigger issue, but really just I'd say because a bigger issue has temporarily overshadowed it, right? What are your thoughts on whether or not the industry has a shortage, or perhaps maybe better put, does the trucking industry have a shortage of safe, properly qualified drivers? What do you think?
I think you're right on both aspects. The average age of a truck driver I know is in early to mid 50s. I mean, we need to bring that bar down. The freight recession, yes, we're in a small one right now, but that's been the cycle of transportation for years and years and years, and it'll continue to be that way. Transportation's not going away. We need to bring a younger generation in, and that's why like you invite me on this podcast, bringing awareness to the positives of being a driver, working in the transportation industry, and maybe trying to shake the stigma. Some people might look at being a truck driver. It truly is a profession, and it's something you can make a very good salary on with very minimal investment, and you can be home at night, just like I am. And a lot of these companies have gotten very creative on their lanes, ways to keep drivers home, or maybe out one night, back the other. They're getting very creative on trying to capture like the segment that petroleum is, getting drivers home, so then it's even more appealing.
Well, and on that, like obviously, home time is an important decision making part of the process for a driver. Somebody to become a driver, that's certainly a factor among many things. Do you have any thoughts? How do we get more drivers in the industry? Any thoughts on what needs to happen in order to attract more of the future of the next generation of drivers into trucking?
Well, yeah, we mentioned something about Next Gen, Lindsay. I mean, I think they're doing great work trying to get it into the high schools. Like I mentioned, my path, I went to a vocational school my junior and senior year. Truck driving, that didn't exist. So bringing that to a high school level, and just showing what we have to offer. I didn't know anything about truck driving till I was 21. So yeah, opening those doors at that age and getting them in, even if they, might want to work on a dock for a little while, loading trucks and seeing, I've worked on a dock some, like when I was doing that LTL stuff. So you can start learning the different avenues of what transportation offers. So yeah, an early age, I think, is probably the number one thing to bring the younger generation into it, for sure.
So, and you are a rarity because you got your CDL. How old are you? Just over 21?
I was 21 years old. Yep.
See, I mean, that's not normal. I mean, obviously the limit is, or the age to drive interstate is 21 years old to get a CDL, but the average age of a new entrant in the industry, depending on who you ask, from the different training schools, are going to tell you somewhere between 35 and 38 years old, considerably older than that minimum. So that, I think, tells you there's some systemic issue that or flaw, right? So I agree with you. I think the work that Next Generation in Trucking is doing can help that. I do have a couple more questions before we get into the deeper dive, but just because I am talking to you and because you are the ambassador that you are, and we really want to address this stigma that is that trucking is not sexy, is probably not the right word, because that's not what we're really shooting for, but it is attractive, right? It's a great industry, and it's so important, just from an economic standpoint and everything that we do. Imagine you're talking to a class of brand new recruits who have no idea what they're getting into. What do you say to them?
I would say, don't get discouraged in the beginning. Actually, I'm going to steal this from one of the finalists I was with last year, and I thought it was a great talking point. Was if you get into the industry, if you're that recruit, your day one's tomorrow, give it a year. Do it for a year. You're going to have struggles in the beginning, like with any new career, and maybe what you're hauling you don't necessarily like, or the lanes you're running. So you can make moves within the industry and find, the niche that suits you personally. So give it a little bit of time, and just don't get discouraged in the beginning, because that I've seen that happen with a lot of young drivers. Like back whenever I was 21, I got hired with several other people, and some of them didn't make it very long. They were struggling getting the concept of just the driving aspect down. So just give it time; it'll come. Virtually anybody can learn how to drive. It comes easier to some than others, but I think you'll like it, especially if you like some independence and freedom, not having, inside four walls with your supervisor or your foreman or whatever, or right down, in an office looking at you. So think of the positives. Think of the reason why you're even there as a new recruit and why you wanted to do this job. So just don't keep a positive outlook.
Yeah, no, good point, because I know that there's a lot of drop off well within that first year, probably like 90 days to 6 months. There's a considerable drop off, and so sort of you're encouraging them to have some resolve. You're going to see how great this is, but hang in there, because it's different. It's going to be new to you.
Absolutely.
You've had an exceptional career as a professional driver. What's next for Dave Powell? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years from now?
Gosh, if you'd asked me that 5 or 10 years ago, I'd have never said sitting here talking to you. I love what I do, so I want to keep doing what I do. I've got tank truck weeks coming up at the end of this month. I'll be there. So if any of y'all are there, come stop in, say hi. I'll be floating around. We'll kind of see where it goes. I don't have any intentions of getting out behind the wheel anytime soon, but maybe one day when I get a little bit older, I'll be ready to, who knows, take a step into the safety world, or, I've dabbled in operations throughout the years as well. So I know I'm not leaving the transportation industry. I can tell you that, so we'll see where it goes.
That's awesome. That's encouraging to hear. We'd like to continue to see you around for the next 5 to 10 plus years. So in trucking. This may be a good segue to our last question, which is a deeper dive segment where we take a question from a listener. Today's deeper dive question is brought to you by National Transportation Institute. And the question is, what is it going to take for the minimum age to get a CDL to be reduced from 21 to 18? We've touched on this a little bit. I'm curious, what are your thoughts? What's it going to take?
Well, I think it's the real question is the interstate compared to the intrastate, and we're already working on it. And my mind immediately goes to a successful safe driver apprenticeship pilot program, the SDAP. I think if last I read on it, I believe we're about halfway through it, and I think we're a little bit over. I think it's November of next year is when it closes, but that has to be successful. And along those lines, I will encourage carriers there's all kinds of room to still get on board with it. They need the data, and if the data comes back good, you're going to get buy-in from federal regulators. You're going to get buy-in from the insurance companies, which is probably the second hurdle to jump. And we're going to capture that early age of segment that we're losing everybody back to. People are joining, the average age is in the mid 30s. Part of that is because they start another career during those young years of life, and for whatever reason they decide to change, it doesn't work out. We can capture that between 18 and 21, and that's, I've been saying it for years. I was so happy when the STAP program started, but we need good results from it, but we also need more participation. So I encourage anyone, I know we would if we could, but we're hazmat, we're excluded. So, but with that being said, if we can capture that 18 to 21, they can have their, couple years required driving done at an early age. I mean, they could be hauling gas when they're 21, 22 years old, So I think that's where that's the first domino that has to fall. And if everything goes good, I think if the data comes in good, we're going to see it sooner than later. And I've got my fingers crossed.
Well, that's encouraging to hear. I feel the same way. So I share that sentiment exactly. Dave, thank you so much for joining me. Congratulations once again. Keep up the fantastic work in being such an amazing ambassador for the industry. Thank you.
Jeremy, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And anytime, let me know. I'd be happy to do it again.
Thank you for taking the higher road with me. Once again, special thanks to the sponsors of this show. We really appreciate you. If you're interested in being a sponsor or joining me for an interview, please email Jeremy at takingthehigherroad.com. Until next time, thank you for taking the higher road.